This episode is brought to you by The Source, Dean Magno, and Greg, this week's newest patrons. Before we get started on this week's episode, I have a challenge for you guys and gals. There's been a lot of talk on this YouTube channel about sailboat insurance.
We're going to need an insurance policy.
Some say you just can't insure a boat over a certain age or under a certain value. And to that I say, challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted.
My boat, as an example, is a 1980 and it is insured here in Ontario, Canada. But just to see, I pretended to be from Florida with the same boat. I Googled an address and picked a house and pretended that's where I lived. And I got a few quotes online. Here's one that I got from United Marine Underwriters, which I think is like an insurance broker, for $1 million in liability. And that's a lot more than most of you need. But my club, because we crane lift, we need $1 million. So that's what I picked. It came out to $150 a month. My challenge to you is this. There is no online database of sort of who was able to get boat insurance and who couldn't. And there's just really internet rumors and hearsay. So let's, me and you, collectively share for the benefit of the sailing community. So I want you to pause this video right now and leave a comment below with what boat you have, including the year, and who you got insurance through. I'll go first. Last week we talked about the best 40-foot sailboats on sale right now. And a lot of you said, yes, Tim, that's great, but I don't want a 40-footer. I want a 45 or a 50 or a 30. So we better take a look at some other sizes. This week on Everything You Need to Know, the top 5 35-footers. Of course, I say 35, but we need to vague it up a bit. So we're actually going to be looking at like 33-ish to 37-ish just to get them all in there. And we don't want to go too low on the scale or we'll step on the sort of 28 to 32 area. And we can't go too high on the scale or we step on last week's episode. Also, I personally have a 35-foot sailboat. So you better believe on a list of the best 35-footers that mine won't be on it. And don't get me wrong, I love Lady K, but she leaves a lot to be desired for me, having cruised on it and lived on it and all that stuff. And you can check out this video right here if you want to see what I'm talking about, where I highlight everything that sort of was lacking on that boat that I learned the hard way. We're opening the gates this week with a monster of a deal right now, and the price was just reduced again by another $2,500 because they say the owner needs her gone. This is a 37-foot Pacific Seacraft for 22 grand. Now these boats usually go from anywhere from 50 grand to above 100 grand. So 22 is crazy. Her original designer was Krelock, of course, made a lot of nice boats, and he utilized sort of a classic design with, instead of a full keel, a more modern split keel with a skeg rudder. And she's sleek, she's beautiful, and a brilliant performer in just about all conditions. And this was proven on her remarkable performance when she competed in the single-handed Trans-Pacific Yacht Race. She was chosen by solo racer David White, and raced against a lot bigger, faster boats, and she finished in second place after 2,500 solo, single-handed nautical miles with an average speed of 6.76 knots for 15 days straight. So this boat is a performer, and it can certainly handle the ocean. And this example of that boat looks to be in excellent condition itself, and from the ad, it looks great. It's giving you 16,000 pounds to play with, which will keep her safe and comfortable without being sort of unwieldy when you try to dock her. And of course, she can be single-handed. Don't tell me she can't, because I'll have David White give you a call. And he did it with great success. On deck, you get a fully battened main on this boat and a 105% Yankee that hangs on at the front and lives in a sail bag. And then you get a stay sail that's on a roller, as well as a cruising spinnaker to sort of keep you moving on those light wind days. And this one carries 80 gallons of fresh water and 45 gallons of diesel. And being a double ender, or a canoe stern as it's sometimes called, she does get tight at the back. But an old salt would surely call this a proper yacht design. The pointy back end makes her more comfortable and better handling in following seas. Inside, you get a nice stable U-shaped galley so that you can cook while you're under heavy seas. You get a nice set of settees to call home when you're at anchor, and you get a dedicated nav desk ahead of the aft berth. You get opening port lights all over the place, and a nice forward berth with a chair in it, for whatever reason, I guess to put your socks on, and that's just forward of a fairly good size head and a bunch of storage for your clothes. And this boat shows fairly well for 22 grand. I don't see anything critical wrong with it in the pictures. You won't be getting the best example of a Pacific Seacraft 37, but you shouldn't for that price. This is one of those boats that's for someone with less upfront cash, but lots of sweat equity to put in after buying it. You could conceivably, if you're that type of person, buy this boat for 22, clean her up, and sell her for a little bit more than you paid, if you really wanted to. But these boats weren't meant to be sort of flipped. They were meant to sail, and sail in the ocean at that. Pacific Seacraft makes one heck of a boat, but where would we be if we wanted something a bit newer? More of a floating condo and something with, dare I say, air conditioning. When you look at the most common sailors of that sort of genre, weekenders, coastal cruisers, this boat is what people usually buy. This is a Beneteau 361, and these things are everywhere. This one is listed at 80 grand, but shop around on these. You can usually find the ex-charter versions a little bit cheaper. For someone who wants to keep the boat in a marina and really enjoy it when they have time, these things are basically perfect. The 361 is about 14,000 pounds, so she's not really a lightweight, and she gives you so much bang for your sailboat buck. It's hard to see why you wouldn't buy one of these. You, of course, get amenities like a furling headsail, and you get a furling main, which makes this boat very easy to use. In Beneteau style, as we know it, from 2001, you get lots of port lights and opening hatches. You get a pretty stiff rig with a boom vang, and all the lines are led aft, again to make her really easy to use. You can go from the dock to sailing very, very quickly with these boats. There's not a lot to get ready. I always see this green sunbrella too on Beneteaus, and I think it's kind of nice. Beneteau, I think, is the only one that's really into the green stuff. And it has a huge tall dodger to keep you dry, and a whole cover for the pedestal to protect all the goodies. Of course, you get the walk-through sugar scoop, like you'd expect on a boat like this. Inside, of course, is where this thing's going to shine. It's a Beneteau. You get a huge wraparound settee and a couch on the other side. This is what sells these boats. An interior that's massively comfortable for a 36-footer. If my interior looked like this, I'd be a lot more satisfied with Lady K. We get that U-shaped galley like we like to see. So when you're at sea, it's very comfortable, very large, and you can sort of brace yourself while you're cooking. And there's lots of room for that, cooking, making drinks, entertaining guests. Everything looks in this boat like it's in its place, too. Everything has a home, and everything's in it. We even get a dedicated nav desk, too. So if you're going to be a work-from-home type, she's got you covered. Plus, we get a nice size head with a shower, and it honestly looks like this would be enough for a couple to really spend some serious time on this thing. Out back, we get the typical sideways aft cabin that you'd likely choose to sleep in if you're the owner of the boat. It doesn't look uncomfortable. And up front, you get that smaller V-berth, again, 36-footer, that you can give to the kids or the pets or the guests. On the underside, she looks to be in reasonable shape. We get that shallower draft fin keel with the bulb, so you won't be terrified every time you try to anchor this thing or going through the smaller inlets trying to get in and out of the coast. And we get that typical Beneteau roomy cockpit with some goodies, including a weather station at the helm, too. Oh, and I mentioned she has air conditioning. If you were someone looking to, let's say, save a bunch of money in the housing market and just live on a boat, this would be one heck of a good boat to do it on. Buy it, park her on the coast, crank up the AC, set up the laptop at that super cool nav desk, and never pay rent again. It's hard to argue with this boat. Let's keep looking at some more options. Lady K Sailing is brought to you by patrons, people who give a couple of bucks an episode to make these videos possible. I want to give a big shout out to all the existing patrons that have gotten us this far. If you find some value in these videos or you want to help out, please consider becoming a patron. I'm going to get murdered in the comments of this video if I don't talk about this next boat, because it is a time-honored legend in the sailing world. So here goes. We have to look at this Cape Dory. They want 70 grand, and that might seem steep for a boat from 1979, but this is a Cape Dory. Cape Dory made thousands of very, very well-loved boats out of Massachusetts from 1963 all the way to 1992, which is a huge run for any sailboat maker. And you likely won't be surprised to hear that one of their main designers was none other than Carl Alberg, who's probably my favorite designer. This 36-footer is a full keel sporting 16,000 pounds behind it, so it's heavier than the Beneteau was. It's going to be better at sea. It was designed specifically to be a traditional ocean-going boat to get you all over the map, with safety and seaworthiness as its top priority. But unlike its sister boats like the Alberg 30s and things like that, this one is a bit wider, so you actually get a little bit of space inside. You also get a cutter rig, as you'd sort of expect with one of these, with a bowsprit that supports the furling headsail. As long as this boat doesn't have soft decks, and you want something very traditional and ocean-proven, this boat is worth a look. Now, as we go inside, ignoring, please, the water damage around one of the windows that probably should have been fixed before they listed this boat for sale, we do get lots of opening port lights. We get a proper chart table, or nav station as we call it now. We get a big quarter berth or sea berth or captain's berth, and we get a lot of original looking woodwork. And remember, this design sort of started in the 1950s when they were building boats made out of wood, and ocean-going, self-sustaining battleships were all the rage. This is a time before global navigation and communication and super accurate charts and just absolute safety because you're so connected. These needed to be absolutely bulletproof because when something went wrong, you were quite literally on your own. You needed a heavy, simple boat that would take care of you without any modern amenities like we have now. And this boat is all of that stuff. An older Cape Dory like this really is for the old salt, the lover of all things traditional. It'll always be a very, very beautiful boat to look at and appreciate it and honestly love them. Especially this one, tied up at the back of your house, like this one is in the pictures. You get to walk outside your back door and see this beautiful example of a very traditional sailing boat. Next up is a bit more expensive, but it is the long-range cruiser model. That means they took a design that already existed and they changed it to make it long range. They did things like a different drivetrain. They did bigger tankage, of course, for long range. They did beefier standing rigging. They did safety bars all over the place to keep you on board. Also, this one's different because it has two hulls. This is a late 90s PDQ LRC. The LRC standing for Long Range Cruiser. This thing was meant to be lived on and sail wherever you might want to go. And the eagle-eyed viewer may have noticed by now, this is a catamaran. In the late 80s, 3 men got together to create the company PDQ. The first man was Dr. Harvey Griggs, an MIT grad in structural engineering, so kind of the brains. The next guy was Alan Slater. He was the chief designer and a longtime believer that catamarans were the future of cruising. And then Alan's son was the third guy, Simon Slater. And Simon came in to design the decks and actually take care of the construction. He was sort of the brawn behind the whole organization. And being a cat, you of course get a huge amount of space. Walking in from the outside, you get a huge U-shaped settee right in the middle of all the action. The port hull has a guest cabin forward, a galley in the middle, and a head at the back with a separate shower stall. The starboard hull is almost the same. It's got a master cabin with a queen berth forward. Then it's got a fold-down chart table instead of a galley, and storage, as well as another large head with separate shower stall at the back. Both bedrooms and heads are a mirror image from hull to hull, and aft of the bathrooms and showers are the engine rooms, where you get twin diesels with overhead hatches to make getting to the top of them a lot easier. In 2016, this boat underwent a pretty significant refit. The sail drives were removed and serviced with new double seals installed, and that's important if you know how a sail drive works. Engines were serviced, and all the maintenance parts, belts and hoses and things, were all replaced. A new windlass was installed, a new forestay, a new furler, a brand new genoa, a brand new mainsail. The list goes on. This is by all accounts a very well kept, very well equipped boat that you could jump on right now for 150 grand and start your sailing journey. And you wouldn't be alone out there. The islands are full of these sorts of, let's call them baby cats, because they're not the monster 45, 50-foot lagoons and leopards that cost $500,000, $1 million, $1.5 million. These are financially manageable cats that give you lots of room and all the speed you can ask for. These are a lot faster than a monohull. Before we cover the last boat in our top 5 today, I do want to say if you didn't see your top pick of 35 footers this week or 40 footers last week, it's because one of my criteria is actually the boat has to be for sale, and not like one or two, examples of it somewhere on the internet. It needs to be a boat that's for sale enough that someone could actually go look at a couple of them and potentially buy one. My top 5 35-foot sailboat list would probably be a lot different if I could just pick anything I wanted and there was no criteria. But this channel is about getting more people sailing, so showing them boats that you just can't find a good example of won't really help them. So my last pick for the top 35 footers is this. This is a 2005 Catalina 36 Mark II. And let me explain before you get mad at me. It's on this list because honestly, it's likely what I would buy if I was buying another 35-foot sailboat. It's new enough to be modern, old enough to be lower price. This one is a 2-cabin layout, so it's just kind of everything I want. Outside of a whopping $170,000 price tag that they seem to be asking, you could find these a lot cheaper, but this one had the best picture, so it's the one we're going to look at. Catalina designed this boat for couples or small families that weekend or vacation cruise, but might also be planning for some extended cruising. They wanted the boat to be comfortable with reasonable performance, and it needed to be stable and predictable under sail. The boat should also fit a reasonable budget for people, and it can be blue water cruised by adding some additional kit. So this boat isn't special in any significant way. It's not magical. It doesn't have any one thing going for it. It's just a 36-foot sailboat. But by not trying to be amazing at racing or amazing at comfort or any one thing, Catalina pulled off something sort of special with the 36 Mark II. This one sports a great out-of-the-weather sort of enclosure around the cockpit, and it already has some solar fitted on the back, as well as dinghy davits, so you're going to save a bunch of money by buying this one, not for 170 grand, mind you. You also get your sugar scoop, and you get your walk-through transom to make it easier to live with, somewhere in like the Bahamas, where you're going to see a lot of this boat. It's already fitted with electronics, though most of them are fairly dated. As long as they work, you'll likely end up just using the depth sounder and an iPad anyway. But alas, for top dollar on this boat, they probably should have given a little bit more to the electronics. The 36 has a fairly roomy cockpit too, so it's very comfortable under passage, and things are neatly organized on this one with Sunbrella line bags at the bulkhead, so you don't have a bunch of line hanging around everywhere. Everything is, of course, led aft, so it'll be rare that you need to leave the comfort of that enclosure. Especially when it's raining, you can still make miles and you can still sail the boat. These boats sport just shy of 14,000 pounds, but it's a fin with bulb keel, so you need less than 6 feet of water to keep her from running aground. Inside, of course, being a more modern Catalina, we get a huge galley with tons of storage and a nice lighter wood finish on everything, so it won't feel like a dark cave inside. We get a dedicated nav desk and that signature dark blue upholstery that Catalina likes to do, and it looks like it's in pretty good shape. Starboard, you get those dual captain's chairs that drop into a single berth. And port, you get a nice L-shaped settee with a fold-down table right beside the keel-stepped mast. And of course, we get our aft cabin with a fairly roomy V-berth too, and it looks like this owner spent some extra cash on real mattresses, which look very comfortable. It's a nice touch. You don't see that anymore. And nothing on this boat looks worn out. Everything looks great, and the head is absolutely huge. This boat will be pretty good at just about anything you throw at it, from living in a marina to weekend sailing, coastal cruising, and of course living in the Bahamas during the winter months if that's your goal. It is just big enough to do everything you need it to do, but small enough to be easy to do it with, and it won't kill you on maintenance because it's a smaller, really simple boat. So remember, if you're buying a 35-foot sailboat, don't buy this one, buy something else. And as I get a lot of requests of people looking for help boat shopping, I dedicated this page over at Lady K Sailing, where you can go to book an hour of my time for a one-on-one chat. And speaking of chat, we have an amazing community forming over on the Lady K Discord. If you want to hang out, I'll leave a link in the description. We do text chat, we do voice, sometimes video chat, and it's all about sailboats and helping each other. Don't forget to leave a comment on what boat you have and who you got insurance through so we can really get an idea of what people are able to insure. Until next week, guys, keep the heavy side down, but not too far down. I'll see you.